Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I am your host, Zack Cherry, and with me, as always, in his pixelated glory, if you are watching this,
is... ... Seriously, what's queef? Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Oh my gosh, queef. What is queef? Do you want to enlighten us?
Well, you know what it is, right?
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. It's a lady fart from the front.
It kind of, that part of the movie, by the way, hey, we're talking about The Strangers Pray at Night, released March 9th, 2018. That scene, it kind of reminded me of like a poorly written, remember in Us when little Jason's like, you can kiss my anus. Like, whoa!
Right. Whoa!
I would have preferred the actual swear word in this case, yeah. We're having a little bit of issue with, I guess, Wi-Fi? I don't know, but you're kind of...
We'll figure it out.
Hopefully you won't freeze, because, there has been freezing moments. But, if you're watching this, just know that we don't know what the fuck is going on here. We're just we just work here.
You're like, get to it. What the fuck?
Yeah. But Strangers Pray at Night, we covered the original a few months back, and we've obviously got the new movie coming out this month, The Strangers Chapter 1. So, we wanted to catch up, and here we are. And I don't remember exactly. I think that you might have been a little bit more favorable to the original than I was when we talked about that, but just
a little bit. You used the term diminishing returns, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Repeat screenings on the movie, and with me, it was more detailed, but kind of the same. Like a little column A, a little column B. I think I had as many pluses as minuses, but I tended to lean in the plus direction, which is an interesting theme, I think, with this franchise now. I'm wondering if it's going to maintain as we move into the future. Because to show my hand, this one, well, there's a whole story. I don't know if you want me to get into it right away.
Well, let's just ease ourselves into it, because the original, like, just to catch anyone up who's new, I'm not a fan of it. I think that the first time I saw it, there might have been this like the sensation around it because it came out and it was this big horror hit, or at least like it got a lot of positive reviews, and it just seemed to me like, after the fact, after watching it again, that it was a little overrated in my opinion. And again, like watching it again for the podcast a few months ago, I found it completely mundane and uninteresting and poorly paced, not really good setup of suspense. Like, there was just a laundry list of issues that I had. And I kind of, sometimes I feel negatively towards movies, and I find out that I'm on an island of my own. Nobody agrees with me. But with The Strangers, what I think is funny is that, like, talk to people. Like, it is very polarizing. Like, there are people that's just like who absolutely love it and people who absolutely hate it. I don't like absolutely hate it, but it's almost like there's this lack of awareness where people, like, people who really are fans of it, who are just like, you don't like The Strangers? Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, there's a lot of people that don't like The Strangers. And just talk to people. Like, talk to people about it. This movie I'd only seen once before, the sequel. And I remember, like, having a good enough time with it. But I couldn't recall, like, did I like it? I thought I might have liked it better than the original. Having watched it last night for this podcast, I can say with absolute certainty that I do like it better. Not by a wide margin, but I think it's a much more entertaining watch. I think it's paced better. I think it leans more into the slasher of it all, and once it gets going, it's just like it's mostly nonstop. I do have a lot of qualms. I don't think that this is, by any stretch of the imagination, a good movie. It's an okay movie, and I think that it's better than it had any right to be.
Okay. I this was my second time seeing it, screening it for this pod as well. The first time I saw it, it was streaming on some platform to which I had a subscription. I don't remember. It came out, you said 2018?
2018, yes.
2018, so it must have been either 2018 or 2019, I guess. Wow, that's way more recent. I thought it was like 10 years ago I saw it. It feels like it. Pre-pandemic, that's why. Anyway, I remember I had just come home after a situation had ended between me and a gentleman who I worked with. So the prospect of returning to work the next day was grim, and I was, kind of pissed. So I needed to watch horror. I needed to watch people get eviscerated to make me feel better.
Okay.
And I turned this movie on. It didn't do the job. I remember feeling very disappointed, and it's not the movie's fault. I think I was so kind of consumed by my own thoughts and my own feelings that I remembered very little of it when I returned to it this time. I don't think I was even paying attention at some point. I think I just kind of went into my own imagination. This time, honestly, Zach, I don't know if it's better or worse than the first one. I feel like it's like this, just as much the same as it is different.
Right.
And I kept noticing parallels, and then I kept noticing differences, and I appreciated both of them, and yet it didn't make it surpass anything. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm okay with this existing, period. But it was a zigzag.
Yeah, there's definitely moments in the original that are executed much better there than they are here. So I like, the whole like, is Tamara home? Because they hit the same beats. There's a few times where it's just like, okay, we've seen this in the first movie, and here it feels a little kind of like made for TV in a way, or just like
or streaming platform.
Sure, yeah, if we're in 2024. But I think that what it comes down to, like the start of each movie, because I had a lot of issues with the first one, just in terms of like the pacing of like, and the introduction of the characters, because I felt like I didn't really get attached to them. I didn't like it was a lot of nothing to see that, like, okay, he proposed to her, they're having these issues. Like, it takes the movie 14 minutes before there's even a knock at the door, and like in that interim they're mostly just kind of moping about, and it's just like, to me, that's not building tension, especially like they showed the end of the movie at the beginning, or at least like the Mormon boys coming to find like all the stuff. So it did the 24 hours earlier trope thing that we've seen in a lot of movies. And I wasn't getting a buildup of anything. It was just, so I considered that to be more of like character development in a way, but I didn't feel that like the characters were really being developed in a way that put me in their experience. I more so felt that I was watching just people doing stuff and not really connecting to either one of them.
Yes.
Where, as in this one, I felt the same thing. It was just like, here's the situation with this family, and we're not really getting on board with them. Like, I don't feel any particular, like, I'm not glomming onto them, and I'm just watching this falderall play out of this situation where I guess they're taking her to boarding school and yada, yada, yada. And I could care less. But the thing is, the difference is that once they get there, which doesn't, like, probably takes the same amount of time. I wasn't keeping track with this movie. But once we hit the ground running, it just keeps going. And I think that for me, that's what made this a little bit more accessible, because it was just a constant, like, high octane sort of just like from one bit to the next. And there was like moments where it got a little Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03 toward the end of just like running from one place to another. And the characters were really stupid in some parts, but then also really that, but then also like more so resourceful in other times, that it kind of was a wash. So I mean, just to put it into perspective in terms of like score, I gave the first one 2.5 out of 5. This is probably a 3 out of 5. So it's like a difference of half a star.
And I think I gave just when you asked me, I haven't officially committed to anything on Letterboxd yet, but I think I gave it about 3. The first one, and this one probably about the same. Like leaning a little bit more toward the positive, but with this one, I think it's because of where it lands. I actually kind of appreciate that, and we can unpack all that too.
Yeah.
But
Well, let's before we get to the premise, I just want to give the shout outs to the Patreon supporters. So we've got our Michael Myers supporters. So thank you to Kyle Beard, Sam Levy, Khalil Young, Brady James, Ellie Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Sean Flanagan, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, Brandy Beebe, and Sean White. And then the Ghostface tier, we got Eric Champney, Daniel Saturn, Tamika Jones, and Garrison Nichols. So thank you very much for all the supporters and anyone who's supporting on Patreon. If you have been listening to the podcast and loving the podcast and want to give back to us in a way, you can head over to my Patreon account under Zack Cherry, ZACKCHERRY, and subscribe there. We've got the Cherry Picker After Dark that airs every month. This month, I believe we committed to Mommy Dearest, right?
Sure.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Mommy Dearest. So to more into cult movies. Last month we had our Survivor Final Girls too.
Yes.
So yeah, if you want even more bonus episodes, head over there and subscribe at the Freddy Krueger tier. You'll get access to all of that. There's like over 20 episodes of bonus content that go on for hours and hours if you don't mind listening to us prattle on and argue with one another. But other than that, I do want to thank our editor, Boy Cried Wolf. So thank you very much to him for all the hard work that he does. So what's this movie about?
Well, glad you asked, Zach. A dysfunctional family of 4 stops at a secluded mobile home park, only to have their every survival limit tested as 3 masked psychopaths make it clear that the strangers prey at night.
Ooh, yeah, very nice. Yeah, I know how, some people really hate when I, pitch another way of like a story could be told, because it's just like, you're not, appreciating the movie that we have here. You're talking about like some fan fiction or whatever. But I mean, I gotta make, say what might have worked better for me at least, or, how this could have been improved. And I mean, if you had cut all that bullshit of like just the family and like, in the diner and like leaving the house and in the van and all that, and just cut right to them getting to the park, there could have been like some room for like a little bit of like mystery, just to sort of like set it up. I mean, we know that we're watching a Strangers movie, but there could have been like, what if, like, we know that the aunt and the uncle own this park, of like the mom's uncle owns this place. So what if like we find out that they had been like drawn there by the strangers, or for like, the just any sort of situation that kind of got them there. They thought it was one thing and then it turned out to be a trap. Like, I'd like to see the strangers be a little bit more crafty and strategic. It's like, now we're going to get people. We know they have family. We're going to places killing people. Let's call their relatives up and get them out here, or, something.
I mean, this is the Scream fan in you again. Yeah. Like something similar. We passed a similar kind of situation with the first movie, where it seemed like you'd be a lot happier if there was more Ghostface in these masked killers. And I understand that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But as per usual, I had an issue with the family, so I'll say the same thing as you, but in a different way, because it wasn't for me. The air of mystery was there. So, and actually, what I did appreciate, this was one of the parallels with the first movie, because I did appreciate it kind of with the first movie too. and I couldn't decide whether I wholeheartedly appreciated it or whether it was just kind of skimping on like putting the backstory at the forefront. But I mean, one thing, it did seem to work. I think I was a little bit more eager to lean in this time around, because it felt like a trope of, and I don't mean that dismissively, but I mean like, or shall we say like a hallmark of this franchise now, that it's going to be a full-fledged franchise, that we meet some people in a familial kind of situation with each other, and there's a problem, and they can't resolve the problem, and we don't know exactly all the details that they do going in. So we're kind of like observing them and catching details here and there in their exchanges, but it doesn't just get like all spilled out like in the car. Like they like just kind of like, you know what your problem is? You blah 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 blah, fill in the blank. Well, your problem is blah blah blah. Maybe if you blah 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 once in a while, you know, like they don't do that. I think it's at the I think it was at the 10-minute mark where finally we find out that like we find out that she's going to Kinsey. I don't even think we knew her name at that point yet.
Yeah.
But we knew that she was going to like a boarding school, and also that there's this animosity between her and her mother, certainly, and that it's breaking her mother's heart and everything. All of that really kind of hooked me in. I felt like that was the mystery that I was kind of waiting for, because I was just as interested in the victims as I was in the milieu, you know, the horror of it all, because I knew we'd get there, especially having seen it before. I had a vague memory that like, yeah, we'll get there. I don't remember sitting around for an hour and then the strangers show up and I'm like, where have you been? But for me, the problem I think I was observing on the other side of it with this family was I couldn't tell whether the lack of chemistry I was reading between the only family members who seemed to have chemistry that was working for me were the mother and the father, who were very into each other, did not seem to be married all that long a time, you know, to like have teenagers and still be kind of like that into each other. It seemed like they actually would have been a lot happier had they never had children, it occurred to me at one point.
Yeah.
And then and the brother and the sister, like there was something about how we started off with such animosity between the two of them. She kept flipping him off like over and over again. But then like there was kind of like a teasing and kind of like a playfulness when they finally discovered the mobile home. And then finally we get to a point where, you know, he's, you know, binding her wounds and, you know, like getting a tourniquet wrapped around her thigh and everything like that and talking her down. That actually was probably one of my favorite exchanges among anyone in the family that entire time, because I was like, this is already kind of like filling in so many blanks emotionally that I need. Like, good, she does give a shit about her family. She's just kind of like been copying an attitude prior to this. So what this is revealing itself to be is a story about kind of like with the first movie, like there was a wedge drawn between those two people, and then all of a sudden these dire circumstances they find themselves in continually, actually by the end of the movie, have brought them together and eliminated any kind of walls that were up. Now I'm just here with you and I love you and you're gonna die knowing that. Same thing with this family. Now, okay. Oh God, Zach. I mean,
well, do you want to like process? Do you want me to respond to any of that before you get into
any response you have? Because I could just keep going.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
respond,
We don't want that. We don't want that. Well, I mean, to speak to this new movie coming out, I mean, based on the trailer, it seems that whatever this like couple is, they don't seem to have an issue. So I'm curious, going into that, how that's going to play out, because it seems like this has been sort of a staple of The Strangers. It's just like, here we have these characters who are kind of dealing with some sort of baggage, who are thrust into a situation, and now in the new movie it just seems like I don't know if they're on their honeymoon. They just seem like, you know, lovey-dovey, like, oh, isn't this great, you know, we're just going to a cabin, and you know, that's the situation. So we'll see how that plays out when that movie is released. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that some of this felt miscast. Like the parents were clearly way too young. Right. Is it Christina Hendricks? Is that the
Yeah, Christina Hendricks is the mom, and Martin Henderson is the dad.
Well, Martin Henderson we
X.
know from X, I believe The Ring as well.
Yes.
But yeah, in X he was the producer guy. I'm just gonna call him like Tex because he looks like he would be maybe that's his name. I don't remember.
Producer, director, fellow. Yes.
Yeah. Maxine's fiance.
Yeah.
And she's done a lot of television. I believe that she was in Mad Men.
Yep. And Neon Demon, an episode of Angel.
Yeah. Oh.
2 episodes of Firefly. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Small roles.
Yeah, and they were great. Like, and I agree. Like on their own, but it just like again they felt too young, and it's just like this seems like a family that. Probably given the age of the kids, or or maybe like that's the thing. Like the girl seemed like she was that age. He seemed a little bit like much older than 18 or whatever. That is Lewis Pullman, Bill Pullman's son. I discovered by looking into it, but it just like it seemed like you're casting parents and their kids who are probably not that far apart in age, unless like. Christina just looks amazing for however old she is, which is probably the case. But
probably, yeah.
But it seemed
very hot parents, yes.
Yeah, but it seemed more like maybe this is like older sibling, like the parents, or could have been like, my sister's 15 years older than me. Just sure. for example, like it didn't feel like this family didn't feel like a cohesive family unit, and maybe that's what they were going for, is just to have a very untraditional family. If that was the thing, like these two got together very young and had kids when they were teenagers, and here they are now. But I
didn't get any of that. I didn't feel a vibe like that. It just kind of felt awkward.
Yeah,
like when he sat next to his daughter. I don't know. There was something about the way it read on the. I mean, maybe I was the only one to think this, but I was just kind of like, "Don't put your arm around her, you perv." And I'm not saying that Martin Henderson is a perv, but it just kind of read not the right chemistry between a father and a daughter. Like something about the body language. I was just like, "No, you're 2 actors. This
almost,
is not no."
Yeah, almost like the twins in House of Wax, like the protagonist twins, having sexual chemistry when they're brother and sister. But there was one bit I wanted to get your opinion on this, because like I guess like when they were at the diner, the mom went out to her when they were like standing in the parking lot and they shared a cigarette. Yeah. I thought that what probably would have worked better is if in the moment when she ran off out of the little mobile home, and then they sent the brother to go off after her, he grabbed the cigarette out of her mouth and like flicked it away. I think what would have made more sense if he took the cigarette out and like shared it with her, just to kind of like establish, maybe they had more of a camaraderie, like there's both like, especially since they survived, just to kind of establish their connection and maybe potential rebellious streak in the brother as well. So it just felt like there was little decisions here and there that like could have been tinkered with that would have made these characters more accessible.
And yet at the same time, I understand. See, this is why I fall on both sides of the line, and why I can have conversations with people who love this movie, just like the first one, and conversations with people who hate this movie, like with the first one, because I can see both sides of the argument, because I understand why the dynamic is there in the parking lot between the mother and the daughter to set up her release of her in the mobile home, which, okay, we'll talk about that in a second. But because I mean, you see like this is tearing the mother up, and the daughter probably knows it, but is too hurt to let her mother off the hook. So you just see 2 hurt women in this family who can't connect. And ironically, the moment of loss when the mother basically sacrifices herself for her daughter is the last moment they connect, and in an incredibly urgent way. Like, so there was actually something really moving to me. I think that was the most moving moment to me up until that point, when I'm just watching Kinsey reach for her mother from the ceiling, and just she cried out "mommy," and I was like, fuck, that felt real. That felt like fuck chemistry, fuck my opinion. That got to me. But yeah. I also I'm glad you brought up the age of Lewis Pullman, because I thought he did a good job playing Luke, but I thought everybody did a good job individually. It was just about, again, the cohesiveness between the family, and it made me wonder, because also nobody really looks like they should be related to each other, and I was wondering, is it a resemblance thing? But then I thought about Hereditary. They don't really look related to each other either, but it is undeniable that is a family. When you watch Hereditary and they're sitting around that table, like, or in, whatever interactions they are, like the house, the vibe of the family is a character in the movie in and of itself, and it would have been nice if I felt that. But also, then again, I fall on the other side wondering, like, is it supposed to be that way though? Is there supposed to be a disconnect? Like, nobody's really fusing together? Is that an intentional thing? And
I don't think it was.
I don't either. But
Shit,
I don't
they should have
know.
called Toni Collette, like her agent, like, I got the role of the lifetime for you. Strangers Pray at Night. You can either do this or Hereditary. Comes out the same year.
Well, because even though Lewis Pullman, I thought, did a good job all the way through, particularly, and I only liked him more and more as the movie went on. There's one horrible decision he makes, but we'll get to that. But I couldn't help thinking, if he'd been cast by a 13-year-old boy instead, and been like a younger brother, and just everything else played out the same way, how much more at risk, how much more dangerous would that have felt to see a young boy going through all of that, who's like moving toward manhood, but not yet a man, but can, and has, because at that age you have certain adult senses developed already, sensibilities, but you're also still very much a child, and I feel like it only would have endeared me to the family even more to see
I agree.
him.
And that's, like, I mean, like, and that's kind of tapping into like Child's Play 2, Kyle and Andy, or Friday the 13th final chapter with Trish and Tommy Jarvis, or Halloween 4, Rachel and little Jamie Lloyd, just like having that kind of, the one thing left is just like, I have to protect my younger sibling or pseudo sibling, whoever. So yeah, I actually agree with you. I think that might have raised the stakes a little bit, because at this point, it, like, once the parents are killed off, it just feels like, all right, I guess, like, you've been forced to fly out of the nest on your own. Now you're adults. You got to figure this out on your own. And it didn't really, that never really registered. Like, there was never really a moment that's just like, we're all that's left, in a way that just like, what, I mean, I know that there's the thing, like, they have the little conversation, which I feel in the moment where you're talking about where he's wrapping up her wounds, and they're kind of having this like memory of the mom, and it's just like, she was just killed. Like, like, I mean, I get that, like, trauma works in different ways, and you might be like, oh, remember when she used to, and it's just like, but I feel like there'd be too much adrenaline going. Like, you're not really in that headspace unless you're gonna be prepared to have a conversation like, what the fuck do we do? What happened to our lives? Just like everything kind of got taken from us, and that's never really put on the table with them.
No, but I mean, at the same time, and I understand, like, that's one of my, again, we're just going to keep alluding to other movies that maybe quote unquote did it better. It makes me think about both versions, the OG and the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, where I think I'm pretty sure in both movies, I know for sure in the remake, there's a moment where they just kind of are in, abject despair, the children who have survived. Spoilers for Hills Have Eyes, folks. Well, it's not that big a spoiler, but those who have survived are just kind of in abject despair over their loss, and they just start screaming to the mountains, like, what do you want from us? Why are you doing to it? They're like, just, oh my gosh, the pain. Not that bad, but but pain. Like, it feels cheap to call it angst. It's beyond that. It's like, absolute grief and loss, and the first stages of mourning. I mean, you're just still reeling from trauma and everything like that. But at the same time, again, I'm going to be the most wishy-washy podcaster on earth about this movie, because one of the things that sold me on it was the hysteria, the fact that they were laughing. And they weren't laughing like, oh, yeah, that's great. Isn't it great, that we can remember that about our mother? It was more like hysteria. It was There was a mania to it that felt very survival-oriented. Like, if I don't laugh, I might lose it. And maybe I'm laughing because I'm losing it. I don't know. There was a gray area that I actually kind of appreciated in that exchange. I don't know if it's 100%, no, Zack, you're wrong. It's absolutely right. Or, no, it doesn't work at all, and it should have been reshot. I don't feel either way. I feel little column A, little column B. I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think that, like, this movie, it's very cliche. It's pretty much plays it by the books. Like, it's a different take on it because it does lean more into the slasher, but it's not really reinventing the wheel. Right. It's just doing a serviceable job, and I think that that's really like the bottom line for me about this movie is that it's serviceable. So his name is Luke, the son. Yes. I don't even remember what the parents' name is. Her name is Kinsey.
Mom and dad.
Mom and that's what they're. Oh wow.
No, I just called them mom and dad. I have no idea what their names are either. It doesn't matter.
Okay. You know, the watch. We'll go look, and it's just like it literally is mom and dad. But her name is Kinsey. Is that like what's the scale that measures how gay you are?
Albert Kinsey or Alfred Kinsey? I can't remember which, but it's a scale of and I always forget if it's 0 to 6 or 1 to 6. And I think it's 1. I think 1 is 100% heterosexual and 6 is 100% homosexual. And it cycled through in the mid 20th century in these surveys that people would go knocking door to door and ask people about their sexuality. Like, do you identify as a 1 or a 6 or somewhere in between? And what was discovered, that's probably the most useful and maybe the only useful thing that was discovered from that survey, was that most people tend to reside somewhere in the middle and not a full-on 1 or a full-on 6. So.
Oh, really? I think that most people would probably lie, especially at that time.
I mean, they were anonymous. They were told that, we don't know your name. I guess going door to door, it's like, you don't know who I am. You don't know my name. I don't know.
That could be that. This is an idea for a Strangers prequel, like just going to random people's houses and finding out how gay they are.
And then you kill them.
And then we kill them. Are we killing the ones who are more gay or the less gay ones?
Oh, no, indiscriminately, just killing everyone, just trying to rack up the numbers, but
using that as a cover,
But also, it might be interesting if one of the killers is genuinely interested in finding out where people fall sexually, as far as their appetites.
But that's the thing. It's just like, why are you doing this? Because you were gay and home.
Can I also say,
please,
one of the major things that kind of bugged me about the parents in terms of the way the film handles them. And I don't even know if I guess script is kind of probably to blame, but maybe there was a problem the script didn't solve. And I don't think the director, who I like a lot of what this director did, his name is Johannes Roberts. He's responsible for the 2 47 Meters Down movies. I only saw the first one. It was okay. And he did apparently a submission, like one chapter in VHS 99, which I also have not seen. Okay. But he I think he had a problem to solve with the parents' executions, each individual one, that didn't get solved in a way that satisfied me. The parents are immensely passive victims. Now, the father, I had to rewind it to try and see what the problem was. And it looked like there was, when the car crashed with the father and Luke in it, a pillar from, I guess, the sign or whatever it is they collided with, stuck into what looked like his torso, somewhere thereabouts in his anatomy, and pinned him into his driver's seat so he couldn't move. And his son couldn't move the pillar. Does that sound correct? It
wasn't very clear in terms of what had happened. Like, that would have been helpful in a way. I mean, we see quick after the fact, like, okay, he's pinned in there by something. But the same thing happened like later on, where like when Baghead or what, Scarecrow officially now as of 2024, when he gets out of the car, and then we see that has like that glass shard inside of him, because we never saw the impact or when it had hit him. So there was actually some editing choices throughout a lot of the movie that you felt were great. Like I had the same issue with the first movie. I don't know if it's the same editor or not, but it's the same writer.
Yeah. Well, Brian Bertino came back and worked with another screenwriter on this one for sure. Yeah.
And he was the director of the first one. But,
yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments because like even like after the mom is killed, there's this quick shot of her head in the sink where she's just like dead in the bathroom, and then it just like cuts to this post or like mailbox with the smiley face on it, and it's just like, why are we seeing this? Like I feel like there is probably more. Like it made me think of Psycho, and just like, you know, after Janet Leigh is killed, how you get that whole thing and we're just like her mouth open on the floor and just kind of pulling out from her eye, and just like really kind of sticking with the violence that had just occurred. And I feel like with that scene in Pray at Night, where like after the mom is killed and her head is just like kind of in the sink, there was an opportunity to kind of linger a little bit there and just like let us feel the impact of what had just happened. And the movie was just like, well, no, let's go look at this, like, because I guess atmosphere. But I felt like I get what he was doing with this movie, because I actually watched one of the features, and he really kind of like talks about John Carpenter and like creating this vibe of like his films, and it's there, but it feels like a very misguided attempt. Like there's a lot of these wide shots where it's like either pushing in or pulling out, I can't remember, like slowly. Sometimes it does it more like quicker, and then there's like fog around, and that was another thing. Did you find that the score, did it remind you of the fog?
Absolutely. There were certain cues that sounded like they were full on just ripped from the Fog soundtrack. And there were other moments that were just synthetic that made me think about John Carpenter in the 80s just in general. Yeah. It made it for a different vibe from the first movie. So that was actually kind of, I don't know about exciting, but I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I think that there was an attempt that was made there, but it was just like, you know, when you're copying someone's work, and I don't want to say copying because that makes it sound like plagiarizing, but I guess like homaging or trying to find the essence of it. It's a fine line. It's a fine. But it's not even a fine line. But like, because like what you're trying to accomplish, like you're doing it very visually, but there's an essence to it. There's an element that you have to kind of dig deeper, and I feel that this was kind of devoid of that. Like it looked like it, but like underneath there wasn't really like a lot of it. And they kept doing that same thing where it's just like these wide shots where it was just like slowly pushing in or pulling out. That I kind of started to get bored of it. Like it was tedious. It's like, we've seen this. You're just showing a different angle of this same trailer park. It's just like there's nothing different about this particular vantage point that was any different from the last one.
The one that stood out to me the most, because I didn't even have to write it down, I thought about it while I was taking a shower before we sat down to record, and I was just kind of like, I'm not gonna, what the fuck was that? I believe it happened after the mother is killed, and I still have to make my point about that, but after the mother is killed and Kinsey is running away and everything, and then we cut to the father and son, Luke, making their way to make their discoveries. And at some point, there's just I think it's static, but it might push in. It's just a photo, a shot of a mailbox with the happy face.
That's what I'm talking about. No, that was what I mentioned with the...
That was the one? Okay, that was the one you were talking about? Okay. That one, it indefinitely sitting there, I was like, and cut. And cut.
Yeah, but that's where it occurred right after showing her face down in the sink. That was the opportunity where they could have lingered with her rather than going to this fucking mailbox with a smiley face on it.
Yeah, it was like, well, okay. It was like, I get it. I mean, they've invaded and made, and whatever. I couldn't tell whether the strangers had used it because I didn't remember a lot of happy faces in the first.
I think there was one. I think that there might have been one. They did the hello and killer or whatever the hypocrisy of it all.
But it didn't resonate with me if there was a happy face. So I was just kind of like, and it seemed to be a theme this time around. So I was just kind of like, oh, all right, whatever. Mm-hmm. But So whatever. I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm ready. You've established the hell out of this mailbox. The tension is like now bled through, and But that's the thing. Because then something interesting would happen. But okay, my complaint about like the with the father. There, he's sitting there next to Scarecrow, and it feels like I'm talking about Batman's villain. Anyway, Cillian Murphy's under that mask, and so Scarecrow like pulls out this ice pick and is playing with, his food, as it were. Like, here, I've got a victim. He's pinned. He can't do anything. So I'm just going to hold up a weapon and let his imagination do the rest. And I thought the performance from Dad was really good and, adequately terrified and, out of breath and already kind of like holding on, gripping for life, as it were, and begging for it. Yet I'm just thinking, well, he's just sitting there. He's not looking at you. He's got a mask on. Why don't you just pull his mask, or push him or punch him or like, and I understand some people are going to freeze in certain situations, but I, as the audience member, am now shifting from fear for this man to really, you're just going to like not do it. And I had a similar reaction to the mother's death, because here she's like, she's doing the noble thing, telling her daughter to go on without her rather than trying to pull her up through the window and risk her daughter getting hurt. That, I understand, on paper is a noble thing. Yet when in finally comes Dollface, Mom doesn't even throw a punch or push back. She just kind of stands there and lets her jab a knife into her gut, I think, or her side, and just kind of takes it and traumatizes her daughter further. Like, it's a good thing to tell your child to run away, but it's also a good thing to let them see you went down swinging, that you didn't just surrender. I didn't understand the mentality even from a survival standpoint. Like, isn't it going to kick in at some point to resist, or at least because personally, I'd think I might at least want to do some damage to the person who's killing me. So they'll spend the rest of the night like immobilized somehow, whether I've poked their eye or even just pulled out a mess of their hair, something.
I think
it would have been a little bit easier to plug into.
We've talked about this before, and it's just like, the moments where you are paralyzed by fear and you're not doing anything. But at the same time, I don't think that these characters, even though they weren't well established, I don't see them as being the type that would be paralyzed by fear. I would see them like, it's where, you have that adrenaline that you're going to forget about, whether you have something wedged in your knee or whatever, that you're going to actually like go and fight at someone who's sitting there or, turn around and like just make use of your surroundings. So absolutely. They're incredibly passive, but so were the couple in the first movie. They did almost nothing the whole time. So I guess it's kind of, it's within the style of however this writer and his writing partner in this one do things, I guess, where it's just maybe that's the other writer. He was the one that just like, well, if the parents aren't going to be active, like, let's at least give the kids a little bit more agency in fighting back for their lives. But you made me.
They did. I mean, that was more satisfying, certainly.
Oh, absolutely.
Eventually, like, but Luke, you walk in. I don't care what the nature of the relationship, is with you and your sister, whether you're like at odds or whether you're, thick as thieves and best pals or whatever, or anywhere in between. Most people are somewhere in between. But you walk in and your sister has just been stabbed by someone. You're holding a gun. I understand exercising some restraint so a stray bullet doesn't hit her. So you threaten the person who was assaulting her and you get her behind you. Now that the person is standing in front of you, they've also probably been the one to kill your mom. You saw. And and I did really appreciate, just from a sound design standpoint, the sound dropping out when Luke saw his mother and his father pushed him out of the room, like, so, because he didn't want him to see it and everything, and the sound just kind of dropped out. It felt like, I don't know, like an abyss opened up in his life, and then it started to come back and move back in real time. That I appreciated. But he's holding a gun against Dollface, and she's even her body language again is just almost, it's just like coming forward like, are you gonna hurt me? Are you gonna shoot me? It's like, fuck yeah, I am. And I didn't understand. I understand why a person might not want to shoot someone. It's hard to kill someone. I didn't understand at all why Luke wasn't. They didn't plant a seed earlier that let me see him as a sweetheart or a pacifist or anything like that.
Which, I mean, like, going back to what you were saying about him being a 13-year-old, that might actually give a little bit more weight to something like that, where it's just like he's unsure, especially if, when this killer is advancing him and kind of taunting it, like, are you going to do it? But at least with him, even if there's kind of like this, like, I don't want to kill someone, but you're certainly, or even like use a gun, but certainly in a scenario like that, I would shoot them in the leg. I would just be like, let's try to immobilize them in a non-fatal way, especially someone who's coming at you with a knife, who has killed your parents. And then even like Kinsey is just like, give me the gun, I'll do it. And it's just like, that was a very frustrating moment. And I guess it kind of, the only thing that, to, I guess, vindicate that scene is that it kind of makes it all the more gratifying when he does finally go full throttle with pinup girl at the pool.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I'm ready to switch gears there yet, because something kind of got like turned up at that point, and I feel like I kind of sailed through most of the rest of the movie after that. But because you brought up pinup girl, I don't remember if it's her first entrance into this movie, but it's certainly kind of like her trailer entrance. Like something they shot obviously for the trailer, which is when Kinsey's hiding out in that big ass pipe, and the truck, as the headlights are on her and approaching, and she's just kind of like, leave us alone, but we've just started. Okay. What did you have a strong reaction to that? Because I certainly did.
Well, you did?
I did, in terms of like, oh, really?
Well, it's sort of, and this is where kind of like the two films followed a very similar template, because it was they would reveal one by one. Because like the first one we were introduced to in both movies was Dollface, then Scarecrow, and then finally Pinup. And we talked about it, and I think you and I both agreed that the Pinup was, I don't know if it was our favorite of them, but she was the leader. She was the one in charge. She was the mom. And very underused in this movie. Like, she really just had that moment, and then when she was in the office and then running out to the pool, and it just felt like, why waste her like that? There could have been so much more. That I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion of Pinup in this film, so I couldn't really tell you. It's just because she's kind of there. I felt like the intent was to like make her this looming, darkness, this kind of like she's the clouds gathering, basically, like the storm is finally here and the thunder's crackling and the lightning's, going off. But I got it in a cheesier way than I wanted to, because this is where the movie kind of veers away from, I think, the general tone of the first movie, which was moderately naturalistic, and this felt very like a high octane, full big block letters moment, like you're in a movie. And it and because it's the Michael Myers moment, but surreal, like what would she have been doing in that pipe, or did she just run into the pipe, and if she did, why didn't you hear clang 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 clang, like it's ridiculous. And it wasn't ludicrous in a way that made me go ha ha ha. It was ludicrous in a way that made me go, really? That said, when we revisit her later, I think it was in the bait and tackle shop where she was going after there was something about, again, body language.
her body language as she was pursuing Luke, that was just such a strut. And like she had this, it wasn't a shimmy, but she did have this kind of, these liquid shoulders, like almost seductive, but like mock seductive. And I was just kind of like, God, she's such a badass. Like I was actually really digging her at that particular moment. And I just thought, you're fucked. Cause she is the thing that they tried to plant with, like, you know, the dad in the car and the ice pick with Scarecrow. I'm going to sit here because I'm the one in power. It didn't quite work for me in that instance, but her freedom in the bait and tackle shop, the fact that she looked like she was ready to shoot a music video basically and had that confidence, I found that, you know, it was just kind of like ka-ching, okay, I'm ready. And ironically, at that moment though, because I didn't remember anything else from that moment on in the movie, I had forgotten a great deal. I thought it would have been scarier to me that moment if he had killed Dollface when we wanted him to initially, because and if Pinup and Scarecrow had known at that point, because now it's no longer just you're a rando and we're coming after you. It is what this movie ultimately becomes anyway, which is a war of families, as it were. You know, that would have just lit the wick a little bit earlier for me and satisfied me a little bit earlier. It came minutes later. There was something about her chaotic run to him at the pool that scared the living daylights out of me. I was just kind of like, that I wouldn't want that running at me. And then when he took her out, I was like, I had forgotten that happened. I was like, wow, good for you, movie.
I vaguely remembered that, because then I remembered Scarecrow, him fighting in the pool. I didn't remember what happened in the pool. I did remember that both the siblings survived. So I didn't I guess like when he was left to bleed out in the pool, that like, he's gonna be found later. So I forgot that she kind of pulled him out. But the thing is, like, he's after that point, he's just useless. Like, he's almost like forgotten about. That I almost wish that there was more of, like, you know, the House of Wax sibling, like we're going at this together, even if one of them is like a little bit less useful than the other, that they're still doing it as a team. Because if that's what these kind of movies are about, where you're starting off with this family who's dealing with this strife, and then kind of putting their differences aside to work together and, you know, survive as a family, that we could have done something rather than just kind of leaving her on her own. Because again, like, you know, we're kind of given this impression like she's a badass rebel and that's why they're sending her off to school, but we don't really see it. Like she does the whole, like, she throws the lighter into the thing and the truck blows up and all that, but it just it wasn't set up in a way that like made me feel like she would totally do that. It just felt like, oh, the movie needed to movie.
That was one of the things where I was like, when we finally did get an explanation for, like, I guess why she was going to boarding school, it was because she was getting bad grades and cutting class. And I was like, really? That warrants boarding school? You're at the end of your, you know, at your wit's end because she cut a few classes and because her grades dropped. Like, and it's not like she was a lost cause. If she had been a lost cause and they didn't mean anything to her, I guess I would have understood a little bit more why they were at the end of their tether. But I don't know. I couldn't understand. It wasn't sharp enough for me. I didn't. I also the fact that the manifestation of her rebellion is basically her flipping her brother off, smoking cigarettes, and wearing a Ramones t-shirt. That's what she did wrong in this movie, you know? So
it's like, but you kids are smoking those cigarettes and listening to that rock and roll music.
Yeah, none of those jazz cigarettes. We know you. I know what reefer smells like. I know how things work in the city. But even that, if they would have leaned into maybe the camp a little bit more, I don't know. But that's another thing is, as much as like there is a tonal kind of, I don't even know if it's tonal, but there is an inconsistency, certainly in style for me in this movie, because that, but it doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. I kind of do half appreciate that a great deal of the movie, when they're again, when there's a heavily wooded backdrop, or when they're in a dimly lit trailer, it resembles enough the look of the first film. But then all of a sudden, when we're at the pool, and in particular the pool more than anything, but really after that too, it doesn't really look naturalistic anymore. It's more, it's got more verve to it. It's just there's just more of a kinetic feel that leans into action a little bit more, and playfulness even on the part of the filmmaker. That is what made me really enjoy those last, I think, 14 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Even the stuff that isn't playful. There was something about in the pool when Luke gets stabbed and he starts to bleed out. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's terrible. And Scarecrow just walks away.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that.
And bleed out.
Yeah. Oh, also when the axe is dragging along the ground when he comes out. That's a good shot. I will say there are no moments in this like in the original, like when he was kind of standing in the background, like the poster for the original. But I think a lot of what you're describing like is also what lends to that is the soundtrack, because there's just this like kind of like 80s pop thing going on all throughout, which is kind of like you can't not think of this movie and think about the soundtrack. It is kind of like the embodiment of this movie.
100%.
I was looking at the budget because I obviously I'm always curious about this. $5 million, and I feel like a lot of that was probably to license the rights to some of the music. Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, seems
it
like
made
it. But good for
made
them.
$32 million. So it was no slouch. I know we talked about the budget for the original was $9 million. It made $82 million. But I think like the original, that money probably went to Liv Tyler.
Yeah. Also, now I'm just thinking like there's something to be said about like striking too late in the game. Like, it wasn't so late that they lost money on this or anything like that. Like, it's not a venture they shouldn't have taken on. But obviously, had they banked on this sequel years earlier, closer in proximity to the first, it probably would have,
they were supposed to, like they wanted to. But it didn't work out. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this new one plays out, because they're certainly marketing the hell out of it. They've got strangers just dressing up and going to places randomly all over the country.
Oh no!
Yeah,
I don't want it. And don't come to me. But I also just wanted to point out like some of the humor that I appreciated is just what I referred to as the Grey Poupon moment. It's when number one, how does when Kinsey's talking to, I don't know if it's a cop or a ranger or whatever he is, the guy in the siren car, and Dollface is in plain view. She's not hidden by anything.
Not at all.
She's well within Kinsey's field of vision, and yet Kinsey, I guess, is too hysterical and too focused on the cop to notice that he's about to I feel like I'd be hyper vigilant, so I don't know, again, the movie needs to movie. But what I did appreciate is she gets in the car, she gets hit by the truck, he does kind of like a circle around her and hits her again, but he pulls up alongside her and just kind of sits for a moment and just kind of looks at her. And I don't know, I'm old enough to remember those Grey Poupon commercials where, two cars are sitting alongside each other. They roll down the windows and one guy says, "Pardon me, do you have any Grey Poupon?" which is fancy mustard. And the other car says, "Of course, always," and hands it to the bougie person in the other car who asked. So anyway, I just kind of thought oh, that's a wonderful kind of weird equalizer and kind of, pithy moment. And then, of course, you mentioned the Texas Chainsaw 03 of it all. One thing that I got was OG Texas Chainsaw, of course, which is jumping into the truck, the bed of the truck, when he's chasing after her. And instead of, I love the iconic Marilyn Burns screaming, "Go, go, go," and just scream laughing for the, for the rest of her screen time. But I love that We get to see her. She picked up a baseball bat, wasn't it, and just thwacked him.
Yeah.
Off
Well,
the
what I
truck.
thought was funny about that, first of all, is that like that woman who came out and was just like, is everything? And then she just turned around and booked it. Like she had no intention of like saving Kinsey at all, but it's just like, well, if you're able to hop on, sure, we'll keep driving.
Yeah.
But in that moment, that's where it would have been made sense if like the brother was with her, because like he was the baseball player, so like he would have had the bat and struck Scarecrow at the end there. But I guess this is where I had some confusion, because it's sort of like they kept driving and daylight is now upon them. At least that was a little bit more naturalistic here. Remember how we complained about the sudden daylight in the original?
Right.
But we're here at dawn, and she's just like kind of and I guess I don't remember if she was laughing or just kind of smiling, on the back of the truck. And I'm just like, where's the brother? Is he not with her? Like there was no shot to show that they had picked him up. So I guess they just kept driving, and then they went back for the brother later because he was at the hospital at the end. But that's where when you're watching something like that and there's that level of confusion, that's a problem. That's where you need to fix that. And
I mean, headcanon, I just assumed the authorities went back to assess the situation and retrieved her brother and got an ambulance and brought him to the same hospital.
Okay,
but
sure.
I did.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Because I don't want to miss this, because you did talk about the cop earlier, and Dollface just sort of traipsing right by their peripheral and kind of behind them to slash his throat. And what I kind of got from the killers and the strangers in this is that there was almost a level to them that like they didn't care if they got hurt. Like they were almost approaching it at a level. It's just like, if we get taken out, so be it. Like like they're that much like we're hunting them, but if we happen to get hunted back, that's just part of the fun. And it's so contradictory with the end of the first movie where they're in the truck and they say, next time we have to be more careful, because they were not careful at all in this movie. They were sloppier in this movie. Clearly they're all dead. So, I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I feel like, again, headcanon, did they plant the seed for it with the first knock on the door and even the second knock on the door in this movie? Because there was something about Dollface's demeanor, especially the second time she knocked on the door, that seemed more preoccupied and distracted and nervous even than she was just kind of and just kind of ducked out. Whereas in the first one, she was this looming silhouette with all the confidence in the world. Again, like she had a bravado to her where she's like, is Tamara home? And they ask, and she says, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, what? It's just like, see you later. Like that's imposing. That is a threat. Yeah. Even if she didn't do anything, I would still, if that happened to me, I'd still think about that girl, even if nothing happened after that. I'd be like, who the fuck was that and what did she want?
Was that?
Whereas in this particular case, there seemed to be, I couldn't tell. I was like, are we going to find out that like the strangers have been fighting, or are we going to find out that or is she nervous because for the first time they're outnumbered? Like they're a family of 4, and like how we've never taken on more people than we can handle. There's always been someone to come through in the clutch, and maybe that's all meant to be implied. But for a movie that straddles so much work I have to do as a viewer to try and fill in the blanks to make things make sense, while also pushing things to the forefront, like a truck on fire, that I am totally on board for, chasing after Kinsey in the end. I again, I'm of two minds of this movie, and no mind at all. I have no idea. I just think if you want to like the movie, there's enough of a case to be made, and if you want to not like it, there's plenty of reasons not to.
I think it's perfectly like smack dab in the middle. It's there. But like just to the just almost like the sloppiness of it, of just like, let's kill a cop. Obviously we know when we kill a cop, more cops are going to come. There's like this, let's just drive this truck around and like smash into things. Like they did that in the first movie, but here they're even more out of control. Like there's no way, like if we could get into the strangers' heads, like to think like what their end game was here, if they actually were going to get away with it. So, you know, we're in a scenario here where we're not really connecting all that much with the protagonist. We're not really connecting with the antagonist. It's really what the strangers has always been to me. It's just an experience that I'm completely removed from and just watching from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
And just to the point of like other stupid decisions that they made when they were running away, and I forget at which point this was, because this is where it kind of got TCM03 for me. And he gets her to hide under the the
trellis.
The trellis, yeah. And all I could think is like, you know that there's 3 of them at least. Yeah. If they've had conversation, and that's the thing, like at no point are they saying like, how many are there? They're just like, they know that there's more, but they're not being strategic. They're not thinking about this. They're out in the open, and he's getting her to hide under there, not thinking that like the other 2 could be anywhere watching you right now, and you're just gonna leave her there. Like, it's just, that was frustrating to me. That is another thing that took me out.
Well, that's where he's his father's son, because his dad's first recourse when they knew that something was up was to get everybody to split up. He and his son were going to go check out Uncle Marvin, I think?
Yeah.
And, you know, get your sister, or get Kinsey back in the trailer, and, you know, and that splits them up, and that's when they lose both their parents.
And their phones.
Their phones.
That was another thing. Okay, so I can understand the parents leaving their phones in the thing, but like if this rebellious teenage girl is just gonna run off in a huff, she's gonna grab her phone before she leaves, and he'd probably grab his phone too, because it's just like, oh, I gotta go after my sister. Like, all right, as long as I can, you know, have my device with me. So I didn't like that. It annoyed me that felt like wasted time of them splitting up and just finding an authentic way to get rid of the cell phones in the movie, because that's the problem that a lot of horror movies have right now, where it's just like, what do we do about cell phones? Because that's, you know, we didn't have cell phones 30 years ago, at least to the point of where they were accessible by everyone. And, you know, like they have to think like, are we in the countryside, or is there like missing bars, like all this bullshit, these hoops that you have to jump through, that, I mean, I'm not suggesting to make period pieces to just like get rid of this problem, but it certainly does introduce a thing, and it's always noticeable when they do things in movies to find a way to do away with the phones. And that's another thing that takes me out of it, because I always know that, like, even in the first Strangers, like, she's not going to be forgetting about her phone to the point where it's going to get thrown in the fire, or things like the kids are going to leave them at the table. Like, maybe if they were being parents and the dad was like, phones, like, everyone's putting their phone in this thing and then he locks it into a thing or whatever, that might have made a little bit more sense. But it's just an issue, and I'm sure we're gonna see it again in the new movie, and it's gonna be even more frustrating then. But
I mean, if it's built in a way that feels like absolutely like I can put myself in that situation, because one thing that I find myself out running with my phone is the battery life. What if you only have like 5% left on your phone? You were about to charge it before the shit started going down. Now that the shit's going down and you need to, you know, start tracking. You grab your charger just in case you find yourself near an outlet. You grab your phone, but you turn it off or put it on airplane mode, whatever you need to do to wait until you get somewhere where you can actually use it in a way that's going to matter. And then you have drama, because at what point, as through the course of the night, is the percentage going to drop, and when are you going to need it crucially, or when are you know. Like there's ways to introduce it as like a whole part of the system rather than eliminate it entirely. Or you could do the thing that most people do, which is like, we're out of range. I don't know how many places are out of range nowadays. I don't know how plausible it is. But
what was it in Get Out? Because like, remember, he had the phone plugged in, but like I guess Georgina kept unplugging it or something. But the thing is, like with like the phone was never really the main driving, because he didn't know that he was in danger yet. He just knew like something is weird that's going on here, but I'm still around good people, that he thought, at least, with some weird people. That it just like, he was able to eventually get through to Rod, his friend. But like a lot of these movies are so reliant on the phones. The other thing I wanted to say with the whole splitting up is it frustrated me in that moment, because like the kids already saw that the aunt and uncle were dead in the thing, and obviously the parents are going to want to see for themselves, but we have to split them up just to go and confirm something that we already knew. That it just like, it's again like the characters being stupid. And I mean, like, at a certain point I can handle cell phones, like it's annoying because it is just modern technology, but I can't handle stupid decisions like that, especially when like nothing has really happened yet. But I mean, like, if you think that your kids are joking, like, I wouldn't be like, okay, well, you go back here, like, we're all gonna go look at this together.
Right.
And then what would have been fun to kind of like give it a little bit of flair is they go back and the bodies are gone. So it's just like, at least the kids at that point know, like, someone is here, someone is doing this. And then the parents can still be like,
Yeah. No, I feel like for the first half of the movie, certainly, there were a lot of things that were happening where I was just kind of like, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they? I couldn't just kind of like give myself over to the action that was happening as it was happening, which is kind of ideally what you hope for in a movie, that you'll just go on the ride and just kind of, just take it. Just take what they're giving you, buy into the logic, and and if something feels weird or you don't trust something, it's done intentionally. You're not supposed to trust that. You have a keen eye. So you continue to be invested in what's going on. I kept thinking about alternate directions that this movie could have taken. I'll talk about one when we finally get to the cherry picker of it all. But even from the get-go, though, with this movie, the opening scene with the aunt and uncle in their trailer, I was confused just with, the aunt gets up and, she knows that some shit's going down, and then apparently she gets, I guess, taken out, first, or at least immobilized and muted first. Yeah. And then you see Pinup Girl. Oh, that was her first entrance in the movie.
No, that was Dollface.
Oh, I thought it was Pinup Girl. Okay.
Was it?
So, I thought it was Pinup Girl, but who knows? That was another, okay. So, one of them moves into the frame, and the dog, this big dog, is just laying there, and she even runs her hands over him, I believe, and he's making little cries, like, you hurt my mommy, or something, and you just see her get into the bed and basically spoon Uncle Marvin or whatever, and that's the opening. And again, I'm just kind of like going, highly implausible. Like, do you know how many, when I'm making deliveries, do you know how many dogs fucking bark at me just for being on the porch? Like, and there are friendly dogs, but I'm sure if I hurt their owner, they'd either attack me or they'd be so scared they'd run and hide. I don't think the dog is frozen with fear to the point where they're just going to stay curled up and just go It was, so right off the bat I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna
and then we
this.
see the dog later. It's been locked in the room, and they open it, and it runs out, and then we never see the dog again.
Yeah, bye dog. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't
what
know
was
why
what was
you
the
were here.
why even have a dog in the movie to begin with?
Of course. And the only other thing I think I have within this framework is the ending. I was kind of praying when they all got to the hospital that the cops were going to be telling Kinsey, we've retrieved your brother, and she'd be like, okay, and what about the others? And they're like, what others? And she'll be like, the family, the homicidal family that attacked me and my parents. Ma'am, we didn't see any homicidal family. And she could go, then they're still there. But
Oh man,
Instead,
it would have been great.
instead what we got though, which I think is actually pretty good in and of itself. I really appreciated this ending. It basically, if someone were reading this story to you, like as a fairy tale, it'd be like, and she was horribly traumatized for the rest of her life. The end. Did you catch the alternate ending?
So in the alternate ending, it's basically the ending that we see, and she's in the hospital room. Brother's, in a coma. I don't know what his situation. Yeah. We're never, brought up to speed on that. But there's the knock at the door. She drops the water. She goes and opens it. It's an empty hallway, and then the lights like, turn off as it like gets towards her, and then she screams. And I'm like, I mean, I hate both of the endings, but I mean, at least if they were going to do something, they could have like had the silhouette of them standing in the door. Like, what is she screaming at? What does this hospital hallway have to do with anything related to the movie? This is where I have an issue with a lot of movies of just like not knowing how to end. And there's always kind of like, there's an ambulance scene and there's a nightmare scene, and sometimes you have both of them. Like Thanksgiving that came out last year, there was a ambulance scene and a fucking nightmare scene, and it's just like how can we be any more cliche that and I go back to you mentioned Texas Chainsaw, the original, of them just on the back of the truck. The movie could have ended there, like when they bashed Scarecrow, if the brother had been with her and they were both on the truck and they're just driving off in hysteria. End of movie. Okay. Like, that's the thing. It's like you want to start late and leave early for any scene, but that would apply to like the beginning and the end of the movie. So like I said, if the movie had started and they just arrived at the park, we're cutting out all that bullshit for the first 10 minutes or so. We're getting right to like the mystery of just something's not right here at this park. And then at the end of the movie, we're just leaving right at the peak of, like, we're doing the Suspiria thing. Like, Susie bursts out through the academy. It's up in flames. She walks out. It's raining. She's just like, feels the water on her face, smiles and laughs, and walks off, and explosion. You have been watching Suspiria. Like that's all you need. And I'm gonna keep saying it until we get those movies again.
Good for you. No,
you've been watching Strangers Pray at Night. Yeah, like, right. Start late and leave early. That's that's the lesson that I'm imparting from this movie.
There you go. Yeah. I understand your point entirely, and like I said, like because you hate the ending, I can get on board with it and go, yeah, I see that. But at the same time, as a viewer, because I didn't know that her brother was still alive, and we discovered at the end in the hospital room, just the movie that we got, I was just kind of like, oh, he's still alive? Oh, all right. I mean, I was still interested. So then and also this is the thing, I didn't like the alternate ending either, because I felt like that's like hitting one note too high. Because another thing, I don't think because she didn't even open the door in the ending of the theatrical release, but when she opens the door in the alternate ending, you see to the right of the screen, there is a smiley face, a happy face, that's been drawn on the door or on the window of the door or whatever it is. And you're just kind of like, oh, so they're still there? Is it a dream? Like, it's just a little too And what I feel like was the fix was there was the knock, but what got her to drop the glass wasn't the knock, it was the sound of the Jack in the Box, or something that sounded like the Jack in the Box when she got attacked with the knife. And because we never find out what's behind that door, I don't need to see silhouettes. I don't need them to be alive. They're dead. It's all about like, it's in its own way doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Who will survive and what will be left of them? She's going to carry this trauma around for the rest of her life. She's going to, and at least for the next year, she's going to hear a low noise and go, ah! It's something she will carry with her. She's been through the ringer, and now she'll never be the same. So the damage has been done. And I can appreciate, it's kind of bleak, but I do appreciate the damage has been done endings, because I think that's life sometimes. It's not the end of life, but it's sometimes a fact you have to carry with you. So I kind of appreciated it in that essence. I don't think you're wrong, though. I mean, it could have been faster. I wouldn't have been upset if it ended the way you just described. I would have been like, oh, okay, it ended sooner, whatever. You know, it's so I'm basically shrugging, and every now and then occasionally leaning in, and then occasionally leaning back and going, eh. But it kept me leaning in, leaning back, leaning in, leaning back. I don't. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Well, on that note, why don't we mosey on over to the cherry picker?
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
All right, first order of business. We need the cherry on top. I mean, I guess like the brother, maybe. Because that whole the sequence at the pool was kind of like, that was the most like, like, get it, like, finally. I didn't feel that same sense of adrenaline when she, you know, finally got the shotgun and shot what's her face, because that to me felt like too little too late. And then even after that point, she was still kind of, I mean, I'm glad it happened, but it was just, it was like, all right, now. But even after that, it like and this is where the editing would have helped, because like I couldn't tell if she had dropped the shotgun. I couldn't tell, like it wasn't clear if she got back into the police car with it, and then that's where the truck came out and hit her. So it still kind of left it open for interpretation. Like, what is she doing? Just in terms of like making smart strategic moves.
I mean, maybe it's purely superficial. The fact that she got the badass moments, though, like he got compelling moments, but he also, the problem is he's balanced for me. Like I mean, balanced in the sense that like there's just as much to admire about what they did with him as there is to go, really? Yeah. And the fact that I can even entertain him being 13 years old and it being even more effective makes me think, is he the best? Like, I almost want to award the dog for getting out of the movie.
Well, I mean, I was just going to say, like, the dog, do we want to give it to the dog who didn't even react to the strangers crawling into bed with the owner?
Everybody has, like, minus.
Yeah, it's really hard. This
Uncle Marv didn't do anything wrong. He was a sweetie.
Well, he didn't do anything.
But he didn't do anything wrong, so. Or, I mean, as little as Pinup Girl was there for, I did, even though I don't like that, you know, that Michael Myers moment they tried to recreate.
The trailer,
the majority of her screen time, I was on board for what matters. You know what, just pick. I don't care. Just make someone. It doesn't matter. That's how disengaged we are.
I know. Let's go with the waitress.
Ooh, the waitress. Okay.
Did she do it? Did she have a moment? Was there like an exchange? I don't remember.
She just asked them. Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought her up because I liked her haircut. Looked like she had it shaved on one side and then it was all long on the other. And she just asked them, like, do you have everything you need or something like that? Or do you need a few more minutes to...
Yeah. You know what? Service industry people need the recognition. I'm happy to go with the waitress because, you know, we were never able to give it to Sandy in the original Friday the 13th, so she'll live vicariously through waitress in Pray at Night. So it's going to be the waitress. That's like
carrying on the legacy of the service industry.
The biggest fuck you to like every character in the movie. We're giving it to the waitress.
Because there's just as much to as there is to applaud. And she's the only one, she's the only one who got it right. Her and Uncle Marv, but
she's doing
Uncle
a great
Marv
job.
Slept. Uncle Marv should have gotten up. You know what? That was his
fuck Uncle Marv.
Okay, the waitress. Waitress.
Waitress is the cherry on top. All right. So last episode, because we've been away for a bit here.
Yeah, a while.
Well, we took last week off, and before that was the cherry picker after dark.
Yeah.
So we're going way back to Mute Witness. We asked you who deserves to die the most. I
God.
nominated Lyosha. You nominated Arcady. Not a lot of votes. I don't think many people are familiar with the movie, but great opportunity for you to go check it out. It's on Shudder right now. Oh, by the way, where is Strangers Prey at Night streaming?
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
I have it right here.
We're so disorganized here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We had a lot to say. It's been a minute. We're a little rusty, but there's the Blu-ray of the unrated edition and the theatrical cut. It's only been released once. Even that edition has not gotten a re-release since the movie, but it's pretty recent. And I streamed it myself off of Max. It's also available on the Cinemax app, and I believe for purchase or rental, charged off of Prime. It's not included on Prime. So
there you go. Anyway, okay, back to Mute Witness. So across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the final tally was 84 for Lyosha versus 176 for Arcady.
Ooh.
Which, if you remember, that's the one you nominated, because I know that they're...
Yeah. He was the murderer.
They're both the same. They're both the same. It's just,
Well, people don't think so. Let's hear what they say.
Existenz. Mute Witness is amazing. It's my top 5 best chase scenes, along with Scream and the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wonderful.
Good to know. But what about our picks? Amethyst Frost. They're like a 2-headed villainous dragon, so it's hard to pick just one. I'll say Lyosha because I don't like his hair or smug energy. Plus, his actual death in the movie wasn't as interesting as Billy tossing the hairdryer in on Arcady. But the one I really wanted to see die was Andy, because he felt like a character who was there to inflate the body count, and his sitcom hijinks kept interrupting the movie. It's like if Shelley randomly survived Friday the 13th Part 3 or something.
Oh my God. I wouldn't put Andy on par with Shelley, but Shelley's even gotten more nuanced to me as I grow older. Watch the movie again in like 10 years and tell me what you think. Get in my DMs.
Mute Witness or Friday 3?
Mute Witness and Friday the 13th Part 3. Watch them both.
Watch Mute Witness right now. Yeah.
Watch.
Gotta Get It Gaming agreed on the non-voting. I also have never heard of this movie. Get on it. DeMonte Thomas. Zack, could you do a cherry picker on 47 Meters Down and Deep Blue Sea and the sequels to Deep Blue Sea and The Strangers Prey at Night and Cry Wolf and Vacancy the Final Cut and Vacancy 2012 if it's possible? Well, it's your lucky day because we did The Strangers Prey at Night, so don't say we never did nothing for you.
Right.
Michael Vasquez says Arcady. And Silent Saturn says, really? No Andy? Literally one of the most grating and annoying characters ever. He gets worse with every scene he's in, and not only does he not get unalived, he doesn't even get dumped in the end. I can only assume it's because he's Karen's boss or he's phenomenal in bed. I don't know. And now he's not even up for the cherry picker. Didn't even come up in conversation. I am shooketh.
Well, I disagree because I thought he got better. I thought he got better as the movie went on. He was terrible in like the first third, and I thought I'm going to hate him and I'm going to be happy when he dies. And then when he didn't, I was like, oh, he's actually being somewhat helpful. Good for him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I just think we picked the wrong people. Everyone had it out for Andy.
Andy. Well, we vote our conscience and our heart here. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I don't even care if I lose, because I might. Because I'm actually glad we didn't make Luke the cherry on top, because he's my pick. And this is why. There were 2 different instances where I thought, not necessarily that he deserves to die, but he should die. The first one was in that moment between him and his dad in the car. And it's that the plus side of that moment is it's a beautiful depiction of that moment when you know it's the last time you're ever going to see each other again, and you're saying, I'll be right back and you'll be fine and everything like that. You know, Freddy versus Jason moment with, what was his name? The kid you pick on me because it begins with an L, right? Lancome?
Lancome?
Lancome. When Lancome... Something like that. Lindquist
Lindmeister.
Lindbergh.
Linderman.
Yeah. We found it. Great. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna verify, but yeah.
I think it is Linderman. But okay, so Linderman. It's that moment basically, but this was even more heartfelt because I don't feel it in that Linderman moment. It's not earned at all in Freddy versus Jason. In this movie, I was like, okay, we got another, emotionally poignant time. What I didn't like about it was this was one of those moments where I'm just kind of watching it going like, oh, it would have been more interesting if a knife would have come through the passenger side window and cut Luke's throat, because they're acting like Luke is going to have to save his dad, and like you think both the parents are going to die. Take Luke out of the situation. Now the dad is pinned, has to somehow free himself, and he's just witnessed his son die. And then you've got that father and that daughter together as opposed to the sibling thing. But I thought the sibling thing ended up working. But at that moment, I was just kind of like, yeah, it would have been interesting if he died. And then the next time I thought he should have shot... The fact that he didn't shoot Dollface, I really couldn't forgive. I thought she should have killed him, and he should have paid the price for not. Like, she's stabbing your sister. She killed your mother, dude. Come on. Unless you're 13, there's no excuse. So I think he's my cherry picker this week for those reasons.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you were like idealizing this scenario where it was the father and the daughter after you already had your little ick moment with them on the couch.
I know. Like I said, like if somebody said like that wouldn't work, I'd be like, you're right. I'm of two minds about this whole movie. What about you, Zach?
You're either a week from now, you're either going to be like, you know what, I'm upgrading to 5 stars, or I'm putting it down to half a star. I'm going to go with my original Strangers pick, which was Dollface, because, I mean, the same reasons as before, with just like, don't be annoying people in the middle of the night ringing on their door. Fucking inconsiderate jerk. And then the whole laughing death in the face, just like getting shot, just like ha 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 ha, just shoot her already. That was the most satisfying when she was taken out, because it's just like I hate that bitch. I do not like Dollface. Like, she is my least favorite of the 3.
That was one of the moments in the entire movie where what I wanted to happen was aligning perfectly with what was happening on screen, because she was laughing, and then we had that far distant, vista shot, and I was just kind of like, shoot her again, and then she did, and I was like, good. So yeah, I'll probably lose, but I don't care. I still find her interesting on screen. And I find him interesting on screen, but he's got more against him. She was nervous. I want to know why, Anyway, here you go.
We're just doing this for fun, so.
Yeah, funsies.
Vote your heart, vote your conscience. You can find the poll on YouTube if you go over to the Cherry Picker. If you're not watching us right now, if you are watching us, subscribe. And if you want to listen, you can go over to the RSS link thing, whatever, in the description down below. And you can listen to us wherever podcasts are streamed. Social media, you can also find us on Instagram at the Cherry Picker Pod. Hey, it's been a few weeks since we've done this. Give me a break.
I know. I can see.
Thank you. And you can all. I know, right? It's always a struggle. It's a struggle. There's some like podcasts and they just like have this all like committed to memory and just like yada yada yada. And I'm like, how do you do that? It's a gift, and we do this so much. I mean, I would get you to do it, but I feel like would still do a better job at it.
And you know what? That's why I will let you till the end of time. Statements
Thank you.
like that.
Well, you would have to have it written down. And if you
No.
didn't, no?
No, if it's a part that we say every single show, I think eventually I would get it in my body and say,
Oh,
I used
cool.
to be an actor.
Oh,
I used
okay,
to be
awesome.
an actor.
Awesome. Thank you for volunteering. So starting next
write
week.
it down. Write it down and send it to me, and I'll have my lines memorized by the next pod.
Okay, sounds good. That's what we'll do.
You're not gonna do it. You're not gonna do it.
No, I will. But go follow us on Instagram at the Cherry Picker Pod. You can also vote there, where we put the poll up every week. And there's also a poll on Patreon. You can head over there if you want to throw an extra vote in. You can become a free member and do that. But, again, if you want to support us, we appreciate the love, and you can subscribe and help the podcast continue going. I mean, you're paying for the paper and whatever that I write the shit down on that Edward will have to read from.
Without you,
Stationary
we have no paper.
Stationery costs money, Although it'll all be online. It's all online. You're paying for Wi-Fi bandwidth, actually.
There you go.
Which I mean, maybe if we had a little bit more, your box would be a little bit more, pristine and
once
clear.
again, people who are listening have no idea what you're talking about.
I think I painted a relatively
I
clear
think
picture
so.
of
Yeah,
what's going on.
they're
You're
just
just
going,
like
"Oh, God."
you're just a collection of pixels right now. You have
I
this
like
entire
that.
time.
I love looking like a watercolor.
Like a Monet.
A Monet.
A Monet.
It's only when you get up close that I look messed up. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think social media for you.
Yeah, Edward is Truth on platforms like Letterboxd, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok still, surprisingly.
Cool. And you can find me on my main YouTube channel, Zack Cherry, spelled the same way. Letterboxd, Zack Cherry as well. And Twitter, Zack Cherry 8. And Instagram, Retro Bitch Face. And as I was saying before, I don't think we know what's going on next week. Have we discussed it yet?
I do.
Let's reconvene. I don't know if I trust you.
I know I should. Oh God, if I were wiser, I'd just say like, no, we agreed on this, remember? And then I would say a title, and then we'd have to do it. But I'm not.
Well,
gonna do that.
get ready next week for a surprise. Until next time, thank you for watching and listening, and we will be